We're at the Western Nebraska Railroad location known as Ofallon, where an eastbound Union Pacific coal train is stopping for a red signal, about to enter the busiest stretch of freight railroading in the world. In the next hour or so, we're going to visit what is known as UP's triple track main line and take a look at this very busy stretch of railroad. Let's preview the route. Ofallon is about 200 miles northwest of the geographic center of the continental United States. There's no town here, strictly a railroad junction. Here, the Union Pacific main line from Ogden, Utah at the bottom, and the South Morrill subdivision, which connects with the Powder River Basin coal line from Wyoming, curving in from the top, merge to form one incredibly busy railroad line. Traveling east from Ofallon, we'll soon see that this busy line has a busy railroad yard. In fact, the world's busiest, UP's massive Bailey Yard. We'll visit the yard as well as the adjacent Golden Spike Tower. Going east from Bailey Yard, the railroad passes through the city of North Platte. At North Platte, the triple track begins, and the line then follows the Platte River. One of the places we'll visit is the Big S Curve near Brady. Then we'll pass through several picturesque Nebraska farm communities with names like Gothenburg, Cozad, and Kearney. This line was opened in 1866, part of the Transcontinental Railroad then being built. A second track was added in 1910 and the third in 1999. Trains, and lots of them, have been a part of life around here for over 140 years. Ofallon has an eastern counterpart, and we'll spend some time at Gibbon Junction, where the triple track ends. We'll finish our look at this railroad in the city of Grand Island, Nebraska, roughly 135 miles from North Platte. We're back at Ofallon, where our eastbound waits patiently. This line is almost exclusively coal trains. It connects with the Powder River Basin line at South Morrill, Nebraska. Many trains on this line have distributed power, where the engineer runs the rear locomotive by remote control. This reduces stress on the train as it goes up and down grades. This eastbound is joining the main line from Ogden, Utah, here at Ofallon's. As soon as the coal train passes, this westbound auto rack train takes the main line toward Ogden. This eastbound is passing through North Platte, the principal community in the region. Just west of town is Union Pacific's massive Bailey Yard, the largest railroad yard in the world. Let's pay a visit. Bailey Yard is huge, covering over 2,800 acres. It's 8 miles long, has 315 miles of track. It has 2 hump classification yards, one for each direction, as well as a diesel shop. Around 120 run-through trains pass through the yard, where they're serviced, inspected, and recrewed. But 40 or so trains a day originate here, the result of the massive classification yards. That's a lot of railroad cars.
About 1.2 million cars a year through North Platte, and what we do is we classify about 500 a shift, 1,500 a day on each hump. So we're averaging about 3,000 cars a day through North Platte that are classified alone. That doesn't include on the unit trains, the coal trains, the grain trains, the intermodal trains that just run through here. That's just what we classify as 3,000 a day. The East Hump was built in the mid to late 60s, 1969 completion. The East Yard is an inline yard. The trains come into the receiving yard, stop. The carmen work them, inspect the cars. We send a switch engine around them, shove them up to the hump, over the hill, and classify them into our bowl tracks, and then they're pulled out the other end into the departure yard. It's an inline yard. It runs right down in a straight line, right in front of the Golden Spike Tower. And then across the other side of the yard is our Westbound yard, and that's a side-by-side yard. The cars come into a receiving yard, and the carmen do the same thing. They inspect the cars there, and we pull the trains out and shove them back towards the hump, which is right next to the receiving yard. We classify the cars, and our switch crews on the other end pull the cars out and shove them into the departure yard, which is right next to the other side of the bowl. So it's a side-by-side yard. Everything's push and pull, whereas on our east side it's all push and then pull straight out. Approximately 2,500 employees. You figure that North Platte's a town of 25,000, so 1 in 10. It's a pretty close-knit community. Everybody knows a railroad.
Bailey Yard is home to the North Platte Diesel Facility, which is the largest running repair diesel shop in the world. On any given day, there are about 150 locomotives in the shop area. Here, UP performs all manner of locomotive repair, from routine inspections to more extensive repairs. While North Platte does not currently do complete overhauls, this shop is capable of doing them. Nevertheless, it's a very busy place. There are 2 sections to the shop. In one area, General Electric locomotives are maintained under contract by GE using Union Pacific employees. In the other area, UP manages the work themselves. Except for new locomotives, the average is that most locomotives will be brought inside for some kind of attention, either here or elsewhere on the UP, about every 50 days. Another area of interest is the East Hump. This is the classification yard for eastbound trains. As Steve Shadd just mentioned, it's an inline yard where cars are pulled back into these storage tracks, then shoved over the hump and down into the bowl. Let's watch the East Hump in action. Union Pacific is continually investing in this facility. During our visit, crews were installing retarders at the end of the East Hump bowl so that handbrakes do not need to be set on the cars. For years, interested outsiders had wanted to see what goes on inside this massive yard, and now they can. Opened in 2008, the 8-story Golden Spike Tower is just what people had been wanting. The top level is enclosed and offers views in all directions. On the 7th floor is this open balcony where visitors have a commanding view of the railroad yard. Directly in front of the tower is the diesel shop, and viewers can easily see the diesels being serviced and moved around. Just to the right of the diesel shop is the East Hump, and to the right of that, the East Hump Bowl. To the right of the bowl is the Eastbound departure yard. On the other side of the yard is the West Hump. Golden Spike visitors have a commanding view of westbound cars being classified into trains.
Westbound UP 8226 East, over. Got a speed restriction for you and ready to copy, over.
One area not seen by the public is the command center. Here, UP dispatchers control movements in the yard as well as trains on each side of North Platte.
Basically, this office oversees the movement of trains, coordinates the traffic flow with Fort Worth and the Harriman Dispatching Center in Omaha. Coordinates the flow in and out of North Platte, out to the coal mines, out to the West Coast and the East Coast. So that's kind of part of what we do, act as like a liaison between the field managers. They're out handling the fires, and sometimes we'll spot the fires for them and point them in the right direction where they need to go. Kind of watch the run-through yards, the origin yards, the classification, make sure we've got track space to take the trains in and process them. And already looking at it, as soon as they get called out of either Council Bluffs, Marysville, Cheyenne, or South Morrill, we've got an eyeball on them, looking at them, making sure we're going to be okay to process. We refer to them as buckets, 8-hour buckets, so we're looking 24 hours out, 8-hour buckets to see if we see any problems in the near future.
At the far western end of the yard is an area where run-through trains get a 1,000-mile inspection before they continue on their way. Here, we see a westbound departing Bailey Yard. On the other end of the yard, we see this intermodal train continuing on its way east, and after we watch it pass, so will we. North Platte is proud of its railroad heritage, and there's a railroad museum in Cody Park. Located here is Challenger steam locomotive 3977 on the front of a short train, and Centennial diesel number 6922. Also located here is the depot from nearby Hershey. In Memorial Park, we find Consolidation steam locomotive number 480. Unlike other communities that let their display locomotives run down, North Platte's locomotives all look like they're ready to run. We're at the big sweeping curve on the east side of North Platte on the triple track. A track crew is tending to some work here while an eastbound coal train gets underway. We're on the Kearney subdivision. "25 miles east of North Platte is Brady, where we have a good view of the three tracks. A few miles east of Brady is Buttermilk Curve, supposedly named because in the old times, milk trains would have milk going into the curve and buttermilk coming out. It's been straightened out quite a bit, but it's still a neat place to watch trains. As we work our way east, we'll pass through many small towns and lots of grain elevators. At Cozad, we see the last Union Pacific passenger station located on this stretch of railroad. It's now the local Human Services Center and has been moved from its original location and turned around, with the track side and street sides of the building reversed. Cozad has an overpass, and the grain elevators provide an interesting backdrop for photos. One can get a great view of the multiple tracks located here. We spent an hour or so here and saw lots of trains. Cozad has another of those classic huge grain elevators. East of Cozad, we see a procession of trains rolling across the Great Plains. We're in Lexington, another one of those picturesque Nebraska small towns. Located at the museum here is 280 steam locomotive number 485 and the station from Willow Island. Lexington has the usual collection of grain elevators, including this particularly old one, made in a style that is disappearing from North America. Lexington has several shippers located here, and we see the local going about its switching duties. At Odessa, we see this westbound Operation Lifesavers special on its way to Lexington. We're in Kearney, which still has a beautiful old downtown. Also located here is a UP office. Kearney has one of the first of a new style of grade crossing installations. Instead of locomotives blowing their horns, horns are installed at the crossings themselves. Now, residents don't hear the locomotive horn blowing through several city blocks. The sound is localized at the crossing. We're at Gibbon, and we see this eastbound coal train curving into the Marysville subdivision off in the distance. At Gibbon, the line from North Platte splits, with the Marysville sub going toward Kansas City and the Kearney sub continuing on east toward Fremont. This westbound is curving off of the Marysville sub. Upwards of 50 trains a day use this line. We're headed east on the Kearney sub. This scene is in Shelton. This passenger extra caught us by surprise. We never found out the reason for the train. We're in Grand Island, and this is as far as we'll go in this program. To close the show, we'll go back to Cozad, where we'll watch more of this incredibly busy railroad while being treated to a fantastic Nebraska sunset. If you want to go someplace to see a lot of trains, the triple track mainline and North Platte's Golden Spike Tower should be high on your list of places to visit.